One of the reasons that this is very important to the city of Tulsa is the city of Tulsa kind of wants to get out from having the tax commission do its tax collection for it. What is the current status of that desire to get out of that?
Since cities in Oklahoma are the only cities in this country that rely on sales tax and have no other source of income, what every city in Oklahoma probably learned going through this recession is how it can wipe out your services and what people in your communities depend upon almost overnight. And for that reason, then at least collecting the tax that should come to you and that people have already paid thinking it was coming to you should be of primary importance. So, we believe that, if the tax commission can do it, great. If they're not able to because they don't have the resources, then we believe in the private market. We think competition is good. Up until 2 years ago, it existed here. The legislature took it away in changing the word may to shall. So we want to try to back out into the private market and see what's the best service for the taxpayer, regardless of who does it. Whether it's the tax commission or whether it's a private firm, or maybe it's both. Maybe it's a blend. Maybe it's a partnership, and that's what we were talking about today. Why can't some private guys work as agents for a public agency, and at the end of the day, make sure every city gets every dime it's coming to it? Not more taxes, not less taxes, just what you and I left in that cash register that you thought was heading back to the city or the county to pay for a sheriff or a policeman, and it's not coming, then we ought to be able to find some way to do effective collection.
I remember when it was first discussed, and I think it's a company in Alabama that Tulsa wanted it to go with. What is the estimate in terms of how much more money the city of Tulsa would realize, both in maybe added collections or stricter enforcement, and then also less cost in terms of a fee associated with that?
When we first started the due diligence with this company called RDS, we asked them for a list of clients that they have across the countries, both city and state. We called those cities and we talked to some of those people at the state level to ask them that very question. How much did your collection improve and how much did the cost go down? And almost without exception, the increase in collection was between 5 and 7% more was collected by the private agency, yet they charged those cities and states half of what their state agency was charging. So applying that to the state of Oklahoma, instead of Tulsa paying the tax commission 1% or $2 million a year for their effort, we would be paying RDS a 0.5% or $1 million a year, and yet see more revenue produced because of their efforts. So you collect more and you pay less to get it. It's kind of hard to beat that.
You talked about, one of the concerns the tax commission has is it obviously depends on cities paying this fee to them to do its business. And if every city opts out, then OTC is left holding the bag, so to speak. You provided a way to deal with that, I guess. What's your suggestion?
Well, this just occurred to me this morning, actually, driving over here, and that is, if you have two competing interests and neither want to yield, I want to keep as much money in the city coffers to provide policemen and firemen. He wants to keep as much money to run his operation because when you take away his money, he hasn't got an operation. So if you think, okay, then there's got to be a third way to do this. And since most of the work the tax commission does day in and day out is dealing with the business, almost like their auditor or their accountant, I got thinking, well, why doesn't the business have to pay for part of that service of compliance and collection instead of the city paying all of it? So even if some small monthly fee of $5 or $7 a month was assessed to a business, at the end of the day, that may accumulate enough money that the tax commission can receive the money it needs to operate, and the city will be able to retain the money that was purely collected from the business without giving any of it to the tax commission. So it spreads out the burden over the tens of thousands of businesses that are out there. It doesn't decimate the tax commission, and it doesn't take, like in Tulsa's case, $2 million out of our coffer that we could desperately use for a lot of things. And it's just an idea.
Following up on Representative Martin's question, because you just came up with it today, presumably you haven't run it by the Chamber of Commerce or anyone like that.
No, and certainly, in my experience has been is that the idea you end with is really the idea you start with. And so, you can modify it, you can talk about hardship, you could talk about a scale, maybe it's $2, $5, $10 or something, depending on size of business. I just think as long as the opportunity is out there to talk about it, I think there's a way of getting to yes for everything without it being a hardship or burdensome on a business. At the end of the day, it's about healthy cities. Healthy cities produce healthy businesses. They bring more businesses, and that's good for the whole state of Omaha.
Do you think there would be any chance that OTC, they're talking about having a new system, being able to provide more information to cities, that they might actually end up being better under their new system than a private company could be?
That I can't say, but it does sound like they are going in the right direction. I mean, they're getting some resources to update. What I heard this morning was 1970 computer systems. They're over in Tulsa now doing show cause hearings, which means working out payment plans with delinquent payers. That's a good thing. Nobody wants to shut down business. Tax collecting should not be a job killer initiative, but you've got to work with people that are having a hard time making their tax payment. I think at the end of the day, the software they want to do is good. Providing data is good. It's all about information. Talking more with the cities, letting the cities have a little more of a hand. As one gentleman said, nobody knows your business better than you in your town. And that is absolutely true. And we just got to find a better way to run a tax system. We don't need to raise taxes at all. That isn't the issue. It's just if we can collect what's owed, then we can probably do what we need to do.
And finally, do you have a timeline or a crystal ball, even preferable, on whether Tulsa will be able to fulfill this contract with an outside company?
Well, I think what we're going to find when the finance director, Mr. Dorflinger, presents his report on Senate Bill 750, in there is going to tell us how we're going to implement a public-private partnership while at the same time protecting and preserving the streamlined sales tax initiative that everyone seems to believe is really very important and should not be compromised. And that was the whole point of Senate Bill 750. And as I mentioned now, the bill clearly said that the Director of Finance has to have a report to implement 750 by September 30th of this year. So we may be closer than most of us think, and some of the questions being asked today about streamlined sales tax may be answered in the report he gives. So I'm anxious for him to come to our next meeting.